All right, let's dive into an invisible world that's right under our feet. It's a world of tiny titans that could totally change how we feed our planet. We're talking about biofertilizers, a living solution to a really big problem.
I mean, think about that for a second. It's a wild thought, right? Instead of just pouring chemicals on our fields, what if we used living things to help our crops grow? Well, that's exactly the idea we're digging into today.
So, to really get why this living solution is such a game changer, we first need to take a step back and look at the problem it's trying to solve. Basically, how we've been farming for the last 100 years or so.
For a long time, the answer to growing more food was pretty simple. Just add chemical fertilizers. And you know what? It worked. Yields went through the roof. But that success came with a pretty steep price tag. We're talking degraded soil, polluted water, and a whole system that depends on fossil fuels. It was pretty clear we needed a smarter, more sustainable way to do things.
This image here really captures that huge shift in thinking. You've got the manufactured, inert stuff on one side, and living, breathing, teeming soil on the other. The whole goal is to move from a system that kind of fights against nature to one that actually works with it.
And that brings us to the star of the show, biofertilizers. So let's get a really clear definition of what we're actually talking about here.
Okay, so the concept is both incredibly simple and totally revolutionary. We're basically adding a super concentrated workforce of helpful microbes to the soil. These tiny little organisms then get to work doing what they do best, unlocking vital nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that plants need to thrive.
Now, this microbial workforce comes from three main groups. You've got your bacteria, your fungi, and a type of algae called cyanobacteria. Let's go ahead and meet a few of the key players on this microscopic team.
And really, you should think of these not just as germs, but as a super specialized team, where each one has a very specific job to do in the soil. So first up is rhizobium. This one's the specialist. It forms this direct, mutually beneficial partnership. It literally moves into the roots of legume plants. Think peas, beans, lentils. And in exchange for a safe place to live and some food, it pulls nitrogen straight out of the air and converts it into plant food. It's a perfect little deal for both of them.
And here you can see that partnership in action. See those little bumps on the roots? Each one of those nodules is a tiny living fertilizer factory, just packed with millions of rhizobium bacteria working 24/7. It's incredible.
Next, let's meet Azotobacter. This one's the free agent. Unlike rhizobium, this bacterium doesn't need to shack up with a specific plant. It just lives freely in the soil, fixing nitrogen all by itself, which makes it super versatile for all sorts of other crops like cereals, cotton, and veggies.
And finally, let's look at something a little different. This is Azolla, the aquatic powerhouse. Now get this, it's not actually a single microbe. It's a tiny little fern that floats on water and it hosts nitrogen-fixing cyanobacteria inside its leaves. This unique team makes it a perfect natural fertilizer, especially for crops that grow in water, like rice.
And this is what it looks like in action. This crazy vibrant green mat does double duty. As it grows, it's constantly enriching the water with nitrogen, and because it's so thick, it blocks out the sunlight, which naturally stops unwanted weeds from growing. Pretty clever, huh?
So we've met our microbial crew, but how in the world do they get from a lab into a farmer's field? Okay, let's walk through the production process.
You know, it's actually a bit like brewing beer. It all starts with a pure strain of the microbe you want. That's the mother culture. This gets grown in a nutrient-rich broth, and then it's scaled up in a massive, sterile tank called a fermenter. After some strict quality checks, that concentrated liquid is mixed with a carrier material to make it easy to handle, and then boom, it's packaged up and ready for the farm.
This diagram here gives you a great bird's eye view of that whole journey. You can see how it starts super small in just a single test tube, then gets scaled up to that giant fermenter, and finally ends up in a bag ready to go. And for something like Azolla, well, the production is even more direct and just mind-blowingly fast. As you can see here, what starts as just a little sprinkle can multiply to cover an entire surface in a dense, harvestable mat in just about 10 days. That's some serious growth.
Now, all of this sounds amazing, right? But is it a perfect silver bullet solution? Well, like any technology, there are some really powerful advantages, but there are some real-world limitations we need to talk about. Okay, so the upsides are huge. They're eco-friendly, they actually improve the soil's health, and they can even reduce the risk of crop failure. But they're not magic. They work more slowly than chemical fertilizers, and their success really depends on getting the right microbe for the right crop under the right conditions, like temperature and moisture. You can't just throw them anywhere and expect results.
But when you do get those conditions right, the results can be absolutely dramatic. The data shows that using the right biofertilizers can increase crop yields by a whopping 20 to 30%. I mean, that is a huge impact from something so tiny.
And this quote really gets to the heart of why all this matters. It's not just about boosting a single harvest. It's about rebuilding and restoring the long-term health and fertility of our soils for generations to come.
So it leaves us with a really powerful question for our future. Feeding the world sustainably is a massive challenge, no doubt about it. But maybe, just maybe, a big part of the solution isn't in a factory, but in the living soil that's right under our feet.